Fly me to the moon and let me play among the stars. Let me see what spring is like on Jupiter and Mars. Hey guys, welcome to Music Theory for the month of January, in which we are going to look at Antonio Vivaldi's Winter. This is a violin concerto. It's from a set of 4 concerti, one for each season. They were written based around a series of sonnets that also described the 4 seasons. And I thought we would cover winter because we are in the middle of that very season. And it's a wonderful piece that you all probably recognize. And I wanted to take you through some of the twists and turns and tricks and harmonic intricacies of this piece so that you can really appreciate it and enjoy it even more than you already do. In particular, today we're going to go through the first movement. I'm hoping next month, still the winter season, I'm hoping to be able to get to movements 2 and 3. But I'm expecting that the first movement will probably take a fair amount of time to go through today. So, first things first, I want you to look in the description of this video, follow the link there, and watch this wonderful performance of the concerto. You can watch the whole concerto even though we're only going to look at the first movement, or you can just watch the first movement. I believe the first movement ends about 3 minutes into the video. The ensemble is called Voices of Music, and the principal or solo violinist is named Cynthia Freivogel, and she's a wonderful player. And in the video, you will see they're using historical instruments and historical tuning, so it's a little bit flat of concert pitch, and some different bow hold than you might recognize from modern violinists. And there's a wonderful arch lute that the gentleman is playing. All this great stuff. So, take a quick break, go listen to that, and then come back. Alright, so we've listened to the piece, this beautiful, wonderful, stunning, memorable piece with so much energy and vitality from Mr. Vivaldi. And so now I'd like to walk you through some of the harmonic choices and other things that happen in the piece and explain why Vivaldi chose to do it that way and why it has the emotional effect that it does. Okay, so the piece starts out in this rather dark-sounding, kind of harsh tonality of F minor, which makes sense because it's about a winter storm. In fact, the first line of the sonnet that would be paired with this concerto translates to tremble from cold in the icy snow. So, not only do you have this harsh, cold F minor, but you also have these little trembling figures in the violins. So that is a really cool example of using musical sounds to create an image or to set an image or to match the poetry. So the piece is in F minor. And we start off with this wonderfully ominous, pulsating beginning section. Building tension, right? If you listen, the bass is going to stay on F as the chords shift, so you'll have some dissonance. And the chord builds. And then you hear how the bass moved down there? What is that bass note? That was F. This is going to be E natural. That's the leading tone of F. that tells you that we're confirming the key of F minor when you hear that leading tone. So let's see if it in fact goes back to F. It does. So that's a little cadence. That's an E fully diminished chord, E being the leading tone, and then F minor. So that confirms that tonality of F minor. Now we start building again. Let's see what happens. We're thinking from here it's going to go back to here, right? But listen to what it really does. Now that's a cool moment. Here's a chord that you might not expect. I don't know if you can tell there, but that chord creates a sense of wanting to go somewhere new. It's actually tonicizing a new key center. Hear that leading tone to that, right? Now what is that? Well, that's B flat minor, but we're going to keep the F going in the bass. So what happened is we introduced an A natural. Okay, so we were in F minor, introduce an A natural. That gives you a very, very brief F major sound, but that A natural is leading you into B flat minor. Okay, so it sounds like this. There's the A natural, right? But here's where it gets super wild. Now you're thinking it's going to go, but again, Vivaldi diverts, right? He sets you up for something and does something else. It's really ingenious. So listen to what happens. I'll go back a few measures. There's the F chord with the A natural. Now listen to this. Ooh. Now we're being pulled in a different direction. Whenever you feel like you're being pulled in a direction, it's probably from a dominant chord or sometimes a fully diminished chord. But usually it's a dominant chord. Fully diminished chord is usually a substitution for a dominant chord. So they kind of go together. Anyway, in this case, you're feeling this pull, right? I'm feeling this pull this way, right? Now that top voice, nah, sounds like a leading tone to here. What is that voice? That's B natural, okay? So a minute ago, we had an A natural pulling us towards B flat. Now we have a B natural pulling us towards C. More properly, I should say C minor. Let's see what happens. Woo-hoo-hoo. He's doing it again. So what happened was that leading tone did in fact resolve. But the rest of the chord didn't behave, did it? Listen. It was supposed to do this, but listen to what it does. Ooh. You hear that half step in the bass? Da da. So now this is a very intricate move. What's happening here is we are going to get to C minor, okay? But Vivaldi is going to make us wait. He's going to do it in several steps. So, with this chord, with the B natural in the upper voice, he's already made us want it. And then he gives us a little taste of it in the upper voice, but the rest of the chord doesn't cooperate yet. What happens in the rest of the chord, you now have an F sharp in the bass. Why is there an F sharp? Well, again, it's a leading tone. That's a leading tone into G. Why are we leading into G, you may ask? We are supposed to be leading into C. Mr. Vivaldi, you're doing it all wrong. Well, no, what he's doing is he is temporarily tonicizing the 5 of C before actually going to C itself. So it's this really intricate weaving and pulling where he pulls you in one direction and then pulls you in another direction, and then you oscillate until you finally are funneled inevitably to where you were going. And it usually ends up being where you thought you were going originally, but the journey has these twists and turns. So let me play this whole setup for you, and you'll see what I'm talking about. In fact, I'll play from the beginning. So I'll just play the chords. I won't necessarily, be able to imitate all the violin parts, but you'll get the idea. Tension building, but still in F minor. Building. Now we have that leading tone in F minor, and it resolves properly. Okay. B flat minor. Now this is the chord that's supposed to lead to B flat minor, but instead it goes here. That's the leading tone into C minor. We're diverted with this fully diminished chord, and then that's G sus and G7. Etc. And now we have landed in the key of C minor. But it's really interesting, throughout that whole preparation, I'll call that the introduction. Throughout that whole introduction, you really don't know where you're going to end up until you get there. And yet, once you get there, it feels like you were supposed to arrive there. It feels logical. And it's because the threads that lead you there are woven so cleverly and subtly within these sort of distracting chords that, so that feels like it's going here, but then it goes there. Here, you're like, what is going on? And finally, it becomes clear. Okay, so that was the introduction. Brilliant piece of writing, and we've arrived in C minor. Now, the piece is in F minor, but modulating to the key of 5 is extremely common. So we're going to have a little solo feature for the violinist in C minor. Harmonically, it's not that interesting. It's more of a soloistic passage that's meant to show off the virtuosity of the instrumentalist. Oh, I should probably mention at this point we're now at the second line of the sonnet, and we've got this description of the horrible wind blowing harshly. So you can kind of hear that reflected in these fast, fluttering, moving, these really fast, energetic passages in the violin. Then it builds. Something interesting to note here, we're moving up in C minor. So the first little solo had the C minor chord spanning from C to C. Now it's the same chord inverted up from E flat to E flat. But listen to the scale as it comes down. Does that ring a bell? Do you know what scale that is? So, well, I'll give you a hint. That's E flat. Do you hear those raised tones right there? If it was strictly natural minor, like this, meaning in C minor we would use 3 flats, B flat, E flat, and A flat. That gives us a natural minor. If we did a natural minor scale, it would sound like that. But you'll notice, because we're starting on the E flat, if we use those 3 flats on E flat, it just sounds like E flat major. Why is that? Because E flat is the relative major of C minor. So a really cool trick to make sure that this doesn't sound like E flat major, but instead sounds like a C minor scale, is to use the raised 6th and 7th of C minor, which are A natural and B natural respectively. And that gives you what we call a melodic minor scale. So it leaves no ambiguity about what key we're in. We're definitely in this key. We're not in this key, right? But if I went, then it sounds like we're in a major key. So anyway, melodic minor originally was primarily intended as an ascending scale because Latido, it gave you those raised tones to lead upwards. But in this case, Vivaldi uses it going down to great effect. Okay, so building in C minor. Then, of course, the logical conclusion is to do the same figure but from G to G. Right, so we did C to C, we did E flat to E flat, now we're on G to G. Same situation. Okay, and now our first set of soloistic flourishes have finished, and we have the return of the ensemble. And you know what comes next. The all too famous Ritornello theme. Ritornello just meaning the ensemble section of a concerto that comes back, returns. Ritornello, returning. It just means sort of the refrain of the piece. So you all know that refrain that comes there. Now, before we get there, these few measures I think are the coolest measures of the whole piece. Listen to the dissonance here. So we've just come out of this whole section of C minor. All right? So the soloist has just finished going, right? Clearly in C minor. Now here's what happens. The ensemble comes in on a C, but then introduces a D flat alongside that C. Dissonance, right? A half step. Now, what is Mr. Vivaldi doing with this horrible sounding half step? Well, he's doing something that is not horrible at all. It's very, very cool. What's the difference between C minor and F minor? You guessed it, it's the D versus the D flat. So C minor has a D natural. If you want to get yourself back into F minor, you're going to need to reintroduce the D flat note. So that's why he brings it in against the C. And then what's the other thing that would imply F minor? E natural, the leading tone of F. So what do we have in the very next beat? An E natural, resolving to F minor as it should. So in just one measure, this brilliant measure, we've gracefully modulated back into F minor with this really striking dissonance that resolved perfectly. It blooms outward. Hear this? And this C's in the middle the whole time. Listen. C, 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 C. Right? Now, he wants to set up he wants to set up that ritornello that we're going to get to in a couple of measures. Here's where the I think my favorite part of the whole piece is. We have a phenomenon called an Italian augmented sixth chord. All right, so what exactly is this? It sounds really scary and really intimidating. It's actually not too bad. So we're in the key of F minor, and I'll show you how the chord is constructed. First, we're going to need a lowered sixth. Of course, it's already lowered in a minor key, so we don't need to worry about that. So we're going to get, that's going to be a D flat. All right. Next thing we need is an augmented sixth. Here's the hard part. An augmented sixth from D flat is going to be enharmonically the same thing as a minor seventh. So it'll sound like a minor seventh. Listen. Do, da. It sounds like sol, fa, right? One whole step lower than an octave. So octave, minor seventh, right? Do, da, da. Okay? But the reason why it's called an augmented sixth in this case is because the notes are going to resolve outwards as opposed to staying static or resolving inwards. So, for instance, in the case of a minor seventh, you would have D flat and C flat. Okay? So, a minor seventh would resolve inwards. Like that. Da-na. So, because in that case, you want to go from C flat to B flat. But in our case, listen to what's going to happen. That note needs to resolve outwards to a C. So we don't want to use the same letter name for two different pitches. So in other words, we don't want to have to go from C flat to C natural. We want to go from B natural to C. In other words, we want this to be written like this: B natural, C, because then we can see on the page that the B natural is the leading tone of C. But if you see a C flat and you're a trained musician, you're thinking it's going to resolve downwards to B flat. So that's why this chord, in this case, is written D flat, B natural, not C flat. Some of you are probably thinking B natural is way easier than C flat. Why would you ever do C flat? It just the more music you read, you'll start to see why C flat is used because of the way that scales are spelled. But anyway, so back to the Italian augmented sixth. You need your D flat, you need your augmented sixth, which is B natural. Okay? And then the third ingredient for an Italian augmented sixth is the original root, the original tonic, which is F. And that is going to just so happen to be a major third within the chord that we're dealing with. It's a major third above D flat. So the chord is D flat, F, and B natural. Right? B natural is the only accidental out of those three. And that actually kind of points you towards the origin of the chord. The origin of the chord is basically you would have this chord, which is a minor 4 chord in first inversion. So key of F minor, the 4 is B flat minor. And if we invert that, instead of B flat, D flat, F, we're going to have D flat, F, and B flat. Okay, that's the historical origin of this chord. Now, how did it get to the augmented sixth? Well, composers saw that they had this nice half-step motion in the bass from the D flat to C. But in the treble, you have B flat to C going upwards. That's a whole step. They wanted to have that same intensity of motion in the treble as in the bass. So they wanted to match that They wanted to match that intensity. So instead of having D flat, F, B flat, they decided to make the B flat a B natural before resolving to that wonderful C chord. Another well-known piece that features an augmented sixth chord. Check it out. Let's see. Not that one, although that's another lovely chord. It's coming up. This is the end of the song. Right there. With the sound of music. Such a beautiful song. And that song's really cool because it actually literally spells out for you the evolution of the chord. It does the major 4 in first inversion, the minor 4 in first inversion, then the augmented sixth chord before going to a 1, 6, 4. It's just perfect. Anyway, so here we have 240 years earlier, we have Mr. Vivaldi doing basically the same exact thing. So it shows you how these things stand the test of time. So anyway, that's the that augmented sixth chord is going to set up the Ritornello figure, which starts on a C7 chord. So Vivaldi wanted to get to C7. He wanted to do it in a harmonically striking way, and so he used that D flat augmented sixth chord to get there with a leading voice in the treble and the bass. So D flat to C and B natural to C. So 2 resolutions, right? How does he set that up? Well, with this wonderful dissonance, again, it's the same kind of dissonance that we heard earlier with the, but now it's down here. It's F and G flat. Now, if you're in the context of F minor and you introduce a G flat, where are you heading? Well, there's 2 thoughts that should pop into your head. D flat major or B flat minor, which are, of course, relatives of each other. So we're basically adding 1 flat. What this is doing is setting up the tonality of B flat minor. Why are you doing that? Because you need to set up the B flat minor in first inversion, because that's the precursor of the Italian augmented sixth chord that we keep talking about. Okay, so listen to what it sounds like. F minor, G flat over F, so introducing some dissonance. Now, F7 over E flat, that has the leading tone of B flat minor. Now B flat minor in first inversion with the D flat in the bass. And then that world famous Italian augmented sixth. Now we're on C7. This is, of course, the most famous and recognizable part of the piece. Harmonically, it is actually extremely simple. And you'll notice at the beginning of the video, I kind of did a funny little stunt where I was singing Fly Me to the Moon along to this section. And it is, in fact, the exact same chords. Also, is very similar to the chords from a lot of other songs like I Will Survive, and a host of Bach and Handel and Corelli pieces as well. So anyway, we start off with this C7, which you might recall is the dominant of F minor. So this is not an arrival point yet. Even though it felt like an arrival point of sorts, it is not the ultimate home. So we had our Italian and then home, bum 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 bum, right? So that dominant chord is propelling us to F minor. Now, if we look at that relationship, C7 to F minor, that is a fourth. Right? Now, what if we want to keep going with that pattern? Well, up another fourth is going to take us to B flat. If we stick in the key signature, we have 4 flats. That's going to make it B flat minor. And Vivaldi does something really nice here. He actually gives us a minor 7th chord. A little more lush, kind of actually unexpectedly jazzy in some sense. This tells you that you're, getting along in the Baroque period where you have these major and minor 7ths being used a little more liberally. So C7, F minor, B flat minor 7, and then we have, continuing the progression, up a fourth from B flat is E flat. Stay in the key signature, it's going to give us E flat dominant 7th. And then perhaps my favorite is this lovely A flat major 7. Again, we're still moving in fourths. And then, continuing the process, D flat major 7. Now, I'll ask you a question here. What is a perfect fourth up from D flat? That's right, G flat. Now, we're supposed to be in F minor. This is like our main theme, the Ritornello theme for this concerto in F minor. Do we really want to go out of the key and play this G flat? Well, you could, but Mr. Vivaldi decided, and I think it was prudent, to stay in the key. So instead of going to G flat, he's going to go to G natural. Now from D flat to G natural is not a perfect fourth, that is an augmented fourth, also known as a tritone. So this is kind of a striking change, but it serves to reorient us and make sure that we're going to resolve back to F minor. So listen to what it sounds like in context. F minor, B flat minor 7, E flat 7, A flat major 7. So now we're on the D flat. Hear the kind of startlingness of that G from this lovely lush D flat. And then we hear that tension again. We know that it's going to have to resolve back. Etc. So G, that's a half diminished chord in the key of F minor. That's the 2, and then again a C7 with that E natural leading tone. That's the 5 of F minor, back to F minor. Now we have a lovely solo section, etc., etc. Nothing, again, with the solo sections, it's really more about the virtuosity of the performer rather than any astonishing harmonic choices. Now, here's the only harmonic point in here that I wanted to point out to you. Take a listen to this. Yeah, there we go. So that's a chromatic bass line actually that features under that sort of climactic run in the violin, and it goes by so quickly that you might not even notice it when it's happening, but it still has that emotional effect, right? Did you hear that in the bass? Kind of reminds you of Dido and Aeneas of Purcell, When I Am Laid in Earth. When I'm laid in earth. Great piece to check out. When I Am Laid in Earth by Purcell. Okay, now we're into a sort of section where the soloist and the ensemble are sort of trading off with these furious 30-second note runs. And this is a great section to listen for leading tones. All right, so let's listen to the leading tones all the way through this section. Here we go. E natural, F minor. Now, the major third of F is A natural. That's going to lead us into B flat. Now, if the cycle continued like that, we would do B flat with a D leading tone to E flat, but that's not what's going to happen. Instead, it's going to go like this. That's from B flat, and now the new leading tone is B natural, which means the chord is G. That's leading us to C minor. And now we will have the B flat to E flat one that we skipped over. A little bit of a calmer one because we're resolving to this lovely major chord. Then a 4-5-1 in E flat. So we arrive in the C flat, finally a little respite from all that harsh minor, the F minor and the C minor just battling it out throughout the whole piece. Now we've arrived in this more gentle, a little more pleasant E flat major. Let's see if it lasts. Similar figure to the beginning of the piece with all that stuff, except now in a major key. So we have these moving chords in the treble over a pedal tone in the bass. Same exact cadence here with the leading tone that we had in the beginning. Dominant chord going to 4. Let's see what happens. Now we're setting up a cycle. All right, this is F7. Leading to B flat. And so we didn't go anywhere too outside the box. That was just a classic little Baroque cycle that led us back to E flat. Now this famous section you might recognize. Do you hear that dominant chord being outlined? Do, mi, sol, te. Or, if we think of the solfege as in the key that it's leading to, it would be sol, ti, do, re, fa, mi, la, la, mi, mi. But now that breaks down pretty quickly, doesn't it? So this is a really neat cycle where the key center is shifting very rapidly. It's very hard to solfege this. So take a listen. We're starting in E flat. Now, if we have an E flat dominant chord, that would set up A flat major, which we do in fact get. But then the soloist very quickly jumps into this F major triad. That and now we have an F7 paralleling the E flat 7 from a minute ago, which of course sets up B flat. But we only hear that for 1 millisecond before getting this G7. So that's a really cool little sequence. Here, I'll summarize it for you. E flat 7 to A flat, immediately supplanted by F7, a whole step above the original E flat 7. And that behaves the same exact way that the previous one did, resolving to B flat, which then does the same thing that the A flat did. It immediately goes away and becomes G, right? Which is the dominant of C, a whole step up. So it's this cycle: E flat, A flat, F7, B flat, G7, C minor. Classic little cycle. You know where you're going to actually hear that cycle, believe it or not? Check it out. Tonic, E flat, A flat, immediately turns into F7, B flat, G7, C minor, same chords. Watch. This is going to be funny. We wish you a Merry Christmas. We wish you a Merry Christmas. We wish you a Merry Christmas. The meter didn't really work out very well, but it was worth a try. Anyway, now we have, we're getting close to the end of the piece. We have another really cool section. Let's check in on the sonnet at this point. At this point, the sonnet is describing teeth chattering in the extreme cold. Now, listen to what happens. You hear the chattering figure, and I'm actually playing it half as fast. It's actually I just don't have the wherewithal to try to do that on the piano. This is a wonderful example of dissonance resolving in a series of a chain series of suspensions. So, what the heck did I just say? Well, take a listen. In fact, I'm going to use a different tone to let you hear this. C minor, that's C and E flat. Now listen. What happened there is I moved one tone, but I did not move the other tone. So if we were in lockstep with a third on the first one, and then I move one tone but not the other, we'll now be at an interval of a second, which is usually a little bit more dissonant. And what that does is it creates kind of like a magnetic repulsion where now the other tone is sort of given this impetus to move, right? So harmony, right? A third. Suspension, meaning one of the tones hasn't moved yet, it's being pushed away. Then it moves. Now a leap. Fairly harmonious. Now one tone will move, but not the other. Dissonance. Now the other tone follows. Lower tone moves, a little bit of a dissonance. That's a seventh. A seventh is a second inverted. Resolution. Let's see what happens. Ooh, here's a minor second. Right? Same one from earlier, but it's going to resolve. There's the third. Major second. They're chasing each other. They're chasing each other down the F minor scale. Tension, release. Tension, release. Tension, release. Now, we're going to break this cycle. They both move at the same time now. That tells you you've arrived somewhere. Building. 5, 1. 5, 1. Now we're back at the famous Ritornello theme. Fly me to the moon and let me play among the stars. Let me see what spring is like on Jupiter and Mars. Anyway, so the lovely, this fierce, stunning, energetic, vivacious Ritornello comes back with a vengeance after all of that wimpy E-flat major stuff that was sort of lulling us into complacency. We get some nice, hearty minor sounds back at the end, which is perfect for winter, this wintry storm that the sonnet is talking about. And then, of course, we get this almost heavy metal ending. It's just epic. And those chords at the end, kind of what you would expect. F minor. This is actually, believe it or not, it's actually 2 half diminished. It's a G half diminished chord, but it's in first inversion, so the bass note is a B flat. So it feels more like a B flat minor. It feels like F minor, B flat minor, C7, F minor, B flat minor, C7. But because you have that G, it has a little bit of extra tension. Because you have B flat, D flat, F, and G, right? F and G, that's a second. Like we said earlier, that creates that tension where the note wants to move away. So, all right, guys. Well, I hope that you love that piece as much as I do. And I hope that this has given you a little bit of insight into the way this piece was composed and why it was composed and how it relates to the text that inspired it. And I hope that you enjoy the piece even more and that you can, listen back to the piece and really start to hear some of the things that we're talking about. And then go off and explore other pieces, check out Purcell, check out Corelli, check out Bach, Vivaldi, all these Baroque composers. They all have the same tricks up their sleeve, and it's all just great stuff. So, thanks for sticking with me, and stay tuned next month for movements 2 and 3 of Vivaldi's Winter.